great. Um, so hello everybody, and like Bella, I'm very interested to hear your voices and hear your stories and hear how things are for you right now. So I put 3 questions up on the chat function. I hope you can all see those. And I'm just hoping we can do a quick whip round. I'll go in the order of people I can see on my screen, so I'll call on you. Just tell me what you can see from where you're sitting and what your relationship is with writing, whether it's something you've been doing for a long time or something you're just trying out, and also what brought you to this workshop. So we'll try and be succinct so that we can get through everything we need to get through today. So Oliver, would you like to start?
Okay. From where I'm sitting, I see a lot of books, and I see my fireplace, which has a rolled up rug sort of sitting in the floor, the tile bit protecting the wooden floorboards from the ash and sparks which might come out. And there are candles on the mantelpiece, and we have a mounted, I think it's a Kandinsky, and another one which is a drawing of my dad done by a family friend, in which he is sitting in an armchair with our dog Benedict on his lap.
So tell me about your writing, Oliver. Just give me 1 or 2 sentences and what brings you here.
Effectively, what's brought me here was what happened was I did English writing last year as part of year 12. It was my favorite course I did whilst at school. Really, essentially what brought me here was Bella, because she posted something in a group.
I can see my relationship to writing is that I've been writing, I was one of those kids who, if you'd asked me when I was 8 years old, what did I want to do with my life, I would have said, I want to be a writer. So I was really lucky to know from an early age what I wanted to do. So I'm just going to introduce myself to you as a writer quite briefly. But there is the complication that I'm actually more than one writer. So my first book was this one, The Alphabet of Light and Dark. That is a sort of literary novel, and I followed up with this one, Rosie Little's Cautionary Tales for Girls, which is a collection of short stories. And then this biography, Housewife Superstar, about a crazy Tasmanian woman who's rumoured to be the model for Dame Edna Everage. And then my 4th book was this one, which is probably my favourite of everything I've written, which is another collection of sort of twisted fairy tales called Mother's Grimm. With my dear friend Heather Rose, she and I worked together as a children's author called Angelica Banks, and we wrote this trilogy that you might have come across. Finding Serendipity was the first book, A Week Without Tuesday was the second one, and Blueberry Pancakes Forever was the third. And so that's my second writing personality, and my third writing personality is the one who's sort of dominating my life at the moment. And her name is Minnie Dark, and Minnie is my pseudonym that I have for writing sort of more commercial fiction. So she wrote this book called Starcrossed, which has been published in, I think, nearly 30 international territories now, and then followed up with this one, which just came out in March, called The Lost Love Song. But this book is likely to die of coronavirus because the launch had to be cancelled and most of the publicity events had to be cancelled. So although the people who are reading it really like it, it's probably just going to die a slow death. So it's a bit sad, but this is what's happening to writers all over the place at the moment. And what we're going through probably isn't anywhere near as terrible as what's happening for people in other parts of the arts, the performing arts particularly. So that's me, and what brought me to this workshop was that Bella invited me to give it, and I really liked the idea that all emotions are allowed, and that attracted me, that idea. I wanted to talk with you guys about that and about what kind of emotions you are having right now, and to see if I can give you some inspirations for how to get those feelings on paper. Before we go on though, let's acknowledge the First Nations people of the world and of where we are. I'm a bit funny about the formulate words that people say. I feel that it's a bit easy to say the words and then not do anything. So what I like to do instead at the beginning of writing classes is I like to introduce people to or remind people about, you know, however it might go, to a First Nations writer. And in this instance, I'm just going to share my screen and show you this. Bella, are you the host?
No, Victoria is.
Are you able to enable me to share my screen? Unmute yourself, Victoria. Can you unmute yourself? Yeah.
Hi, yes, I am host and I'm going to turn my camera off, but I need to add you in. Can anybody remember? I have seen it, but I've forgotten how to.
I think it would be participants, maybe.
Yeah, you make Victoria. You make Danielle a co-host, or make her host, maybe even. You click more.
Okay. So I'm the host now. So let's try. Well done, Victoria. Thanks.
I'll switch my camera off now because I'm just going to do host duties.
Okay. So hopefully you can see my screen now. I just wanted to introduce you to this particular Australian writer. Her name's Ellen Van Neven. She wrote this beautiful book called Heat and Light. So that's my way of doing a sort of acknowledgement of First Nations people.
That's a lovely way of doing it.
Thanks, Oliver. So I think my dogs may have just come into this room too, so we'll move on. But in a minute, I might have to get up and go and move my dogs, who are likely to start having a squabble. They usually do that at this time of night. So if you can see dogs squabbling in the background, it's just two kelpies playing. Okay. So as I said before, one of the things that made me say yes to coming to this workshop was the idea that all emotions are okay. I really like that approach. We're living in a really weird time. It can bring up really strong emotions, both positive and negative. And I think just as we don't want to pressure people to feel okay when they actually don't, we don't want to pressure people to feel not okay when they actually do. So I'm interested to know what kind of emotions you've been experiencing over the last couple of months. So I'm going to, again, just quickly go around you guys and get you to tell me that. But I might start this time. What I've been experiencing in the last couple of months is a strange mixture of emotions. On the one hand, I've been experiencing a lot of gratitude. Before coronavirus, my life had got really too busy. I was very overcommitted. So I'm a writer. I have a job at the university. I've got 3 children. They're all very busy. I spent a lot of January in tears saying my life is too busy. I can't cope with it. And then everything just stopped. So the opportunity to come home, to sort of gather my chickens into the nest, to stay home and to be grateful for the things I have and just to slow down has made me really, really grateful. Now, I know I'm lucky to have a home and to have a family, so I'm not insecure about accommodation and I'm not lonely. But although I've been really happy at one level, I've also been extremely anxious. I haven't been sleeping well. I have a lot of nightmares. The flip side of having children and an extended family, I think, is that I have a lot of people that I feel really responsible for. And it feels that my choices are really heavy because I'm carrying those choices for a lot of other people. So I'd love to hear from you. What's been good? What's been bad? It might be all of one, might be all of another. Doesn't matter. All emotions welcome. Why don't we start in the reverse order this time and ask Elise first?
So during isolation, I felt very frustrated. I'm a year 10 this year and I'm a very academic person, and I've been very frustrated because this is the year where I'm supposed to get all my studies together. And as an actor, we have our big production, which has had to be pushed back, which is really frustrating because I just want to get it done with. I wanted this year to go well, and in a lot of ways it hasn't. But on the positive side, I've been working and earning money, which will help me in the long run, really.
Right. Thanks, Elise. What about you, Misha?
I guess one of the main ones is probably a bit kind of disappointment, because there's a lot of things that have been cancelled, or that that have just kind of stopped, that I was a part of. But so that's not so good. But also I think, like you, I was really busy before this, so most days it was really crazy. So it's been nice to kind of stop and kind of appreciate where I live and my family and the things that I'm grateful for. So that's been really positive as well.
What about you, Michaela?
I moved from Tasmania to the Gold Coast, so life was pretty busy at the time. I've been wanting to do a million things in one hit, and I've been able to sort of take a step back. I went from living alone to living with people, so loneliness was the big thing that's sort of gone now. And I haven't really done a lot. I've just sort of taken a step back, and that's been nice. And I was likely to have to give up my role as a part of the human library, and because of Zoom I'm able to continue that, and likely to be able to continue my studies in Hobart because of Zoom. So I've had a lot of positive things from Corona more than negative. But I used to like to go out a lot, so but I've taken a step back and been okay with it weirdly, so I don't know.
What about you, Rachel?
I also had spent a year of traveling around a lot and not having many weekends at home, and I just moved into a new house when lockdown sort of hit, so it was actually kind of a nice nesting time and respite time. But I have felt in the last 2 weeks my motivation really waning, and my work is with people, and I love being around people, and I miss that a lot. So I am starting to feel, I was feeling quite anxious about things going back and school going back and us all being together, but now I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks, Rachel. What about you, Bonnie?
I've really been enjoying spending time with my mum. I feel like year 12, I was just off everywhere, doing all sorts of stuff, being busy, hanging out with friends. And it's nice to spend a lot of time, just slow down, think about my life. And I feel like before COVID was a big storm, COVID happened and I got shut in, and now I'm like, okay, what's the next move? And so I'm really looking forward in life and stuff. So, yeah.
Thanks, Bonnie. What about you, William?
I was about a week away from moving interstate, and just after a breakup when COVID hit. So all my plans and jobs got put on hold. So I'd say for me initially, and still throughout, it was just loneliness. But then I've had determination, and I'd say gratitude as well. Determination to kind of use the time still productively. I was in a state of accepting change, and so try and put some positive changes into my life, even in solitude. And then the gratitude kind of snuck in there. Gratitude for my friendship with my roommates. Despite being kept together, we haven't killed each other, and that's actually amazing. And we haven't yelled at each other. And gratitude towards myself. I think I've done some pretty cool things despite the odds.
That's great. Oliver, how was it for you?
I'm in a bit of a different position from most of you. I'm currently on a gap year, so it's been quite irritating not being able to do all the social things that I normally would be doing. And yeah, something which I've really, really like, which has sort of kept me through this, kept me going, is the writing and my cycling. I've been doing a lot of, like, I've been doing daily bike rides. Like, I was doing this before, but having the time to just sort of be outside and not really thinking about anything but like riding my bike and just being like not in nature but just not being stuck indoors has been such a great relief. And also something else is I've found that I've figured out who my real friends are a bit more, like the ones who message you instead of waiting for like you to message them. I mean, I still message people because yeah, but like it's nice to know that I've got some really good friends out there. And yeah, it's also been good because my sister's been down for this time, and it's been really good having her around at the moment. So yeah, that's me.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for sharing all of that. I'm pleased to hear that for most of you, there's at least something positive in life at the moment, as well as, you know, the frustrations. So the genres that I wanted to encourage you to have a go at and that I want to share with you today, you may well and truly be very familiar with them, or you might not have been exposed to this kind of writing very much before. And the two forms that I want to talk to you a bit about are prose poetry and flash fiction. And the reason that I thought these would be particularly good genres to think about right now is because they're really good for expressing short, sharp hits of emotion, whatever that emotion is. So you can really get a distilled dose of gratitude or frustration, or you know, what it feels like to be out on your bike after you've been trapped indoors all day, or whatever feeling it is that you're having. You can give someone a really concentrated dose of it through a piece of prose poetry or flash fiction. Now, they're quite similar beasties to each other, I think, prose poetry and flash fiction. I don't think that you will find any consensus out there in the world about what actually constitutes a piece of prose poetry as opposed to what constitutes a piece of flash fiction. Maybe it doesn't matter. Possibly prose poetry would foreground the use of language more, while flash fiction might foreground the narrative more, or perhaps those distinctions aren't important at all. So whether you want to call it prose poetry or flash fiction, what I'm talking about is really small pieces of fiction that are a great way to process emotions and share emotions. So I'm going to give you some examples now. So 3 of them I'm going to be able to put up on the screen for you to have a look at, and I'll read them at the same time. So if you don't like having something on a screen and hearing someone read it at the same time, close your eyes and I'll read it to you. Or else you could block your ears and just read, whichever you like. So 3 of them I can put on the screen, and then the 4th one is just from a book I'm going to read to you. So what I want to give you here is some exposure to some different kinds of prose poetry and flash fiction. One of them I wrote myself, 3 are by other writers, 2 that I know, 1 that I don't. And when we get to the end, I'm going to ask us all to use the chat function for a minute and just write some quick responses. So I'm going to be asking you, what did you make of those pieces? Did any of them speak to you in particular? What did you notice anything about what joins the genres up, or what you thought they might be useful for in your life? So I'm going to read you 4 pieces of short fiction, and then we'll talk by chat for a short while. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you again. Okay, here's the first piece. It's called Eggs, and it's by a Victorian writer called Cassandra Atherton, and she's probably Australia's best known prose poet. You buy me a Royal Dalton Bunnykins egg cup for Easter. On its side, a picture of anthropomorphic field rabbits sheltering under a red umbrella. Your card says it's to hold my boiled egg upright, for when I dip in the tip of buttery toast soldiers. But I'm not ready to eat your eggs. I don't want to be another of your lovers served deli style at your kitchen bench. Instead, I imagine that when my egg has cooked for 4 minutes in your saucepan, you turn and tell me I'm as perfect as that egg. But all I hear is, first murderer, what, you egg? Ovum, zygote. On Good Friday it rains, and you take me to bed. My ovaries greet you, sunny side up. So that line, first murderer, what, you egg, that's a reference to Macbeth. So Macduff's son, Andrew, is murdered in this scene, and he's described as an egg because he holds potential, I guess. All right, the second one I'm going to show you is by a UK poet. Her name's Abigail Parry. So she describes this as flash fiction, but she's actually a poet, and I think you'll be able to tell that from this beautiful piece. I love this one. A New Arrival by Abigail Parry. It's a boy, cheered the first row of cards, and under this banner were plump, hairless things swaddled in pastel blues in the dreamy gauze of soft focus. Their eyelids were thin as splashes of milk, and he wondered briefly at the formless, primordial scenes that would be unfurling like snowdrops underneath. Their sisters were folded neatly into a trim column next door. Here was a whole sunset of different shades of pink: rose petal, candy floss, fuchsia, ice cream, cherryade. He'd never imagined there could be so many. And in each nestled another little dozing bundle, its own shade of pink entirely. None of these would do. In the end, he opted for the non-committal A New Arrival. He bought a black biro too. He'd have to add the extras himself: the hair, the teeth, the scales. It would be hard, he thought, to get the eyes right. Okay, the third one I'm going to share with you is one that I wrote recently, and this came out in one piece, fully formed, when I was having a very particular emotion. So you might be able to work out what that emotion is from me reading it to you. And I would call this a prose poem, just for whatever that's worth. It is 5 minutes or less since I was you, pushing away from land in my small craft, so sure of the way, the waterway, not knowing what I took from my mother, who stood on the shore, less aware still of her mother, my grandmother, in the house on the hill. Though in memories I now make up, she watched from the window as I went. We were each of us born, grandmother, mother, me, you, with eggs inside us, nested like Russian dolls. And now I watch you go, standing here on the bank as my womb turns to dust. I want to call out about the rapids and the rocks, the swerve to the left, the waterfall that leaves you gasping, if you're lucky. But though you are only a few feet out, it's already too late. And that smile, sure and ready, it's already too late and you cannot hear me. But even if you could, I would stay silent, not wanting to take from you that smile, sure and ready, not after I've gone to all this trouble to peel it off my own dry lips and smooth it over yours so ripe and red. Though I watch you go, my eyes are drawn too to the skin of my hands as it crinkles to crepe and the curls of my hair crimping to grey, all of which I have seen but not believed until now. And the tears I shed are my mother's, those I thought to be all for my sake, which in truth were half for the sorrow, now mine, as you drown the last of my youth in your wake. I turn to the house on the hill. So there are 3 tiny little pieces of work, and just for a little bit of comic change, I'm going to read you one from this fabulous book, Simon Armitage's Seeing Stars. And I think this one is definitely in the category of short fiction rather than prose poetry, but others of the stories in this book would probably be more prose poetry than flash fiction. And this one is called The Cuckoo. This is great fun, this one. I love this piece. I hope you enjoy it too. When James Cameron was a young man, this happened to him. I should say, Simon Armitage is an English writer. And I'm assuming he means James Cameron, the politician. When James Cameron was a young man, this happened to him. After his 18th birthday party had come to an end and the guests had disappeared wearing colourful hats and clutching cubes of Battenberg cake wrapped in paper napkins, James's mother sat him down at the breakfast bar. The smell of snuffed candles and discharged party poppers floated in the air. "James, I'm not your mother," she told him. "What?" he managed to croak. "I work for the government and my contract comes to an end today." "Does Dad know?" asked the bewildered James. "Oh, he's not your father. Don't be cross with us. We're only doing our job." James felt like a gold tooth sent flying through the air in a fist fight. "What about my brother, Peter, and all the family?" "Actors," she said matter-of-factly. "I don't believe you. Not Auntie Madge." "Oh, especially her. She went to drama school. She was always a tad Shakespearean for my taste, but some people like that approach." The small tear in James's eye, like a baby snail, finally emerged from its shell. "Will you leave me?" he asked. She said, "There's a taxi coming in half an hour. I've left chili con carne in the fridge and there's a stack of pizzas in the freezer. Pepperoni, the ones you like. We're opening a bed and breakfast place on the East Coast. Actually, it's a safe house for political prisoners, but I can't tell you that because, well, I know you won't repeat it." Suddenly, she looked like the meanest woman who ever lived, though of course he loved her very being. James went outside. His best friend Snoopy and Carla, his girlfriend, were leaning on the wall with suitcases in their hands. Carla was wearing sunglasses and passing a piece of chewing gum from one side of her mouth to the other. "Not you too as well," said James despairingly. "Afraid so," said Snoopy. "Anyway, take care. I've been offered a small part in a play at the Palace Theatre in Watford, and there's a read-through tomorrow morning." "She's off to Los Angeles, aren't she, Carla?" "Hollywood," she said, still chewing the gum. James said, "Didn't it mean anything, Carla? Not even that time behind the taxi rank after the Micro Disney concert?" "Don't know," she shrugged. "I'd have to check the file." James could have punched a hole in her chest and ripped out the poisonous blowfish of her heart. He walked heavily up to the paddock. If he'd been a smoker who'd quit, now would have been the time to start again. If he'd been carrying a loaded firearm in his pocket, he might have put that to his lips as well. Then a bird fell out of the sky and landed just a yard or so from his feet. A cuckoo. It flapped several times and died. However tormented or shabby you're feeling, however low your spirits, thought James, there's always someone worse off. His mother had taught him that. It was then that he noticed the tiny electric motor inside the bird's belly and the wires under its wings and the broken spring sticking out of its mouth. So,
You got Truman showed.
I hope you enjoyed those. Would you mind now just using the chat function for a minute? So we'll just stop talking for a minute and talk by chat. So it's 5:42 now. Let's take until 5:48 and just share your thoughts with me. What did you think of those pieces? What joined them up? What separated them? What do you think of these genres, or what use do you think you could put them to? So what I'd like to do now is, could you just give me a show of hands, just give me a thumbs up. Did you decide to do the reading that was sent around in the email beforehand? Okay, if you didn't. Okay.
I did.
Great, thanks, Michaela. Sorry, most of you and some of you just a little bit.
I read a little bit.
I've been thinking a lot lately about the concept of the shadow, and that essay describes the concept of the shadow quite nicely. So I know many of you have read it. For those of you who only read a bit of it, it's a Jungian concept from C.J. Jung, and the idea that each of us has somewhere inside of ourselves a shadow, that we have some repressed parts of our personality that we may keep sort of smushed inside, and our shadow tends to be comprised of the things that we don't really like so much about ourselves, or that we reject about ourselves. But as this article goes on to explain, it's not just our personal shadow, there's also a kind of collective shadow. And I've been thinking a bit about COVID-19 as a shadow in our lives at the moment. And one of the points that the article makes is that while the shadow can come across as the opposite of good, and this force of darkness that opposes light, it's also something that has a lot of energy and can have a lot of wisdom. So we were discussing the sort of ambivalence of our feelings before. You know, some of you were saying, well, this has been really frustrating and really sad, but at the same time, there have been positives. So I'm wondering if this is a shadow that we can take something from. But I think thinking about this concept of shadow, both within ourselves and in the world, could lead to some really interesting writing. So I'm going to share my screen with you again and just keep talking for a minute, and then I'm going to get you to do a writing exercise, if that's okay. Okay, so you can probably see on my screen some images that were not very difficult to throw together. These are just 4 pieces of pop fiction that I've encountered in recent years. I'm guessing a lot of people have encountered these over the course of their lifetime, or possibly recently, where what is being battled is fundamentally a shadow. So in The Lord of the Rings, there you've got the Nazgul. In Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, you've got the Death Eaters. What are they called? The
Dementors.
The Dementors. And anyone seen the Netflix series A Letter for the King? Again, the villain of the piece becomes a huge sort of overwhelming shadow. And then Stranger Things, the entire concept of the underneath and this shadow world, this alternative.
The upside down.
The upside down. Thanks, Oliver. So the entire concept of the upside down is really the shadow of the world, you know, above. So here's that quote I was talking about. The shadow is multifaceted, amorphous, and difficult to define exactly or specifically. It's a force, a concept, a construct, an archetype, existing both externally and internally, universally and individually within the human culture and within the human psyche. It's the opposite of light, love, goodness, and life, yet it also contains within it tremendous energy and wisdom. Like the concept of yin and yang, within light and shadow exists a seed of the other. So that's from that article by Jocelyn Robson in The Art of This.
The article also touched on the theatre aspect of it, and how any actor or theatre person understands the concept of comedy versus tragedy, and just how that was a very clear use of shadow, like, I mean, description. Like, it was a good way of putting it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that sort of resonated a bit. And how comedy isn't always funny stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so in the chat now, I'm going to put just instructions for some writing that we might like to do together now. Just a really quick 5-minute writing exercise, just to explore that idea of the shadow and what it might mean to you. So if everybody has something to write with and you're happy enough to spend 5 minutes writing, you might just get one line out of this, or you might just start to think about it. Here, I'll do it with you too. I'll write as well. So here are my instructions. So you can write about the collective shadow that we're currently facing. What's frightening about it? What does it remind you of? What do you think it wants us to know? If you want to take a slightly lighter approach, you could focus instead on your personal shadow. You could describe your shadow, your dark side, and come up with a funny name for it if you like. Or you could write a dialogue between yourself in your shadow in which you argue about a trivial issue, like how to put toothpaste on a toothbrush, or how to do the dishes, or how to cut an onion, or whatever you like. So there are a few different options there for something you might like to try. So it's 5:55. Let's take until 6 o'clock. Just don't overthink it. Just pick one of those challenges that you think sounds appealing, and just write without censoring yourself. Just have a bit of fun. Interrupt you, but maybe find your way to the end of a sentence if you can. Okay. Did you have any fun?
Yeah.
Good.
Uh-huh.
I see General nodding.
I quite enjoyed it.
Good. I'd love to hear how you went, and if anybody wants to read anything, please feel free, or if you just want to tell me how that went, also feel free. Bella, do you want to be brave and tell us how it went?
I didn't end up following. I started what I thought would be like the greater shadow, but it ended up like a dialogue. So now it's a BuzzFeed article. 10 ways my government made me grow up. 1, I like hugs. Hugs are bad. Hugs are dirty, filthy. No touching now, but I need hugs. The operator has placed you on hold. 2, centuries ago, did we solve racism by everyone living on an island and not taking boats to other countries? And then, we are implementing an international travel ban. Your temporary Australian visa does not count. Please leave now. Operator has placed you on hold. 3, 6 months previously, a coughy cough, a runny nose, then a runny routine, a sore throat, a less sore stomach. I've got to, and that's as far as I got.
Great. I'll look forward to seeing that when it's finished. Anyone else feel like reading or sharing? Oliver?
I'm happy to read.
Great.
Isolation is dark, introspective, and unnatural. We are not solitary creatures. We long for each other's company. We are sad when that is made unavailable to us. All people are people. We all need a hug sometimes. We all need a D&M. We all need each other. especially when we are struggling and suffering.
Thanks, Oliver. Thank you very much. Hello, Holly.
Hi,
Welcome.
thanks.
Holly just said she was running late, so I said join in. We've only just started writing. So.
Anyone else feel like reading, sharing? Bonnie.
I kind of ended up being like, you know how the earth is doing better because people are not in the streets and there's lots of things going on Facebook and stuff. I started writing about the earth and how it's having like a breakup conversation with humanity.
That's great.
Yeah, because you don't want to kill them or anything, but you need some space. So yeah, I don't know. It's not all there, but I like the concept, so I thought I'd share that.
So you've got the beginning of something to be going on with.
Yeah.
Great. William, you got something to share with us or tell us?
Sure. I might have gotten too excited and strayed a little bit on the concept, but also might not have. I might be wrong there. A rubber band is stretched to the length of 1.5 meters between the two of them. Taut and tense, it tries to pull them together. They shouldn't give in. It's not safe, is it? Why have I never noticed that they're so beautiful?
Lovely.
That's really nice.
Lovely. Really nice. Thanks, William. I think that makes elegant use of this very short form. Thank you.
Was I completely off in the representation of a shadow?
All emotions allowed here and all interpretations of the challenge allowed too.
Sweet.
Cool.
Anyone else want to share or read?
Michaela put hers in the chat.
Okay. A crabby parent's thumb. Nice, thank you, Michaela. I'm sensing that hugs are a very big thing here. So maybe if we can fit it in, we might see if we can fit in a little bit of writing about hugs somewhere in this session. I'll see if we can fit that in. Rachel or Misha or Elise, anything you want to share about how that went for you, what you wrote?
I could probably read mine.
Great, thanks, Elise.
What we live in cannot conform to one name, one face, or one place. It is within us, our friends, and the children of the earth. It is something we cannot rid of, but must learn to accept and embrace. There is no escape from ourselves, so why must we run?
Nice, thank you, Elise.
I'll do mine.
Great, thank you. You guys are great.
This shadow comes in the form of sanitizer and staying away from the people you love. It fills people with emotions that they aren't entirely comfortable with. People around you are positive, but sometimes all you can do, and that's as far as I got.
I like the idea that shadow comes in the form of sanitizer.
Really powerful sentence.
Yeah. Rachel, anything you want to share with us?
Mine's a bit rambly, so I won't read it, I don't think, but I just was kind of musing on the idea of the shadow being like the way that the days gradually get shorter, and you kind of don't notice until it's like really dark. So I wrote this line, often we don't notice until one day you look up at 5 p.m. and it's dark and you say, hey, where did all the light go? What will I do with my evening now that it's dark?
Yeah, I think that's a great germ for a piece of writing, Rachel, because I think the days are getting smaller or shorter in numerous ways. I think, you know, not only are we going through this as we go into winter here in the Southern Hemisphere, but also I think as we get more and more used to being at home, the days just feel shorter. Because they're a bit sort of Groundhog Day, aren't they? That, you know, days can be a bit the same. Yeah, I ended up writing about how all the graphics about this disease show it being really bright coloured, like, you know, with its little red spikes or orange, burnt orange, I think the colour is on the graphics, but I can't help of thinking it as black and like little tiny bats clinging upside down to people's lung tissue. And when I first saw the word COVID, I misread it as corvid, C-O-R-V-I-D, which is the word for ravens and crows. So I think there's something coming together here about the blackness, but when you look at something that's very bright black, it's got that kind of rainbow shimmer to it. So I'm going somewhere with that.
You could definitely do something on something like a raven of death or something like that. That's got heaps of potential in that. Yeah.
So thank you everybody for playing along. On the flip side of the idea of the shadow is another figure that turns up in popular culture, that turns up in our kind of archetypal architecture of our own minds, and that is the figure of a guardian. So I'm going to share my screen with you again and show you some other images. So again, it didn't take very much thinking to throw these images together from popular culture. And I'm sorry that I haven't quite figured out a way to show you the slide without losing everything else on my screen. I'll get better at that, I promise. But you can see there Galadriel in Lord of the Rings when she appears to Frodo as if in a dream, and is the helping hand that comes when he needs help. And Harry Potter's expecto patronum moment when he himself conjures his own guardian, but he believes it to be his father. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi in Return of the Jedi speaking there to Luke Skywalker about, you know, the truth of his life. Mary Poppins, who comes for just long enough under her umbrella. And then, of course, Miss Peregrine in Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. She's a very particular kind of guardian there with her raven black hair and her crossbow. And what the guardian made me think of, or the figure of the guardian made me think of this beautiful quote from the Talmud, which is this one: every blade of grass has its angel that bends over it and whispers, grow, grow. And of course, the important thing to remember is that you are one of those blades of grass, and that bending over you is an angel that says, grow, grow. And might be saying that to your writing, it might be saying that to yourself. I don't know, but I'd like us to think now about who or what you think watches over you. So in my life, I tend to think that my grandparents, I've lost all of them now, I tend to think that they watch over me. So I have one particular grandmother, and Victoria's heard me read about her previously. She lived in a small house on the Brooker Highway, and in many ways she was a very unexceptional woman who lived a very, very suburban life. And the most exciting thing that happened every week was that she went to the TAB to bet on the horses. And she taught me to play a version of poker. And when she died, I inherited her cake tins and her handwritten recipe books. Holly's going into the upside down. And so my grandmother was, on the one hand, incredibly ordinary woman, and then on the other hand, she was exceptionally bright and really, really interesting. And so when I make cakes using her cake tins and her recipes, I talk to her, and I really feel very powerfully that she talks to me and that she watches for me. And I have a grandfather who was And he was very smart in his way, in a very different kind of way, and often, and very opinionated about giving advice. And often now, when I feel that I need guidance, I'm able to ask him what to do, because he gave so much advice that I've sort of internalized it all, so I can still have conversations with him. So I see them as being my guardians. But what I'd like us to do now, if it's okay with you, is just take 5 minutes, and this time, instead of writing about a shadow, write about who or what looks out for you, who or what looks over you, what protects you, what is the balancing force to that shadow. So it's 6:13 now. Let's take until 6:18. Again, don't overthink it. Just start writing. See if you can work out who or what you think watches over you.
I put mine in the comments again because it's pretty loud here. So.
Thanks, Michaela. Wise counsel to be one's own guardian. Did anyone else go down that path? William?
I did.
Was that you, Elise?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyone want to read us what they wrote? William's up for it. Then I might come back to you, Elise.
I hated the rules at school. Why does my shirt need to be tucked in? I'm a 12-year-old boy. I can't look smart. Losing rules sent me into a spiral when I left, though. How do I determine what the right thing to do is? I don't have to get up early anymore. I don't have to do anything. School didn't give me the rules that I have now. I did. Man, are they great. I love getting up to the dawn. I love knowing how to act. And guess what? I tuck my shirt in.
Well, I'm very pleased to hear that, William. Elise, did you want to read yours?
Probably not. It's a lot of rambling.
Okay. Anything you want to tell us about how it went?
I was just I was going along the concept of how I am my own guardian and I find my own protectors in my own form of light. Like, because I'm not a very spiritual person, I believe I make my own decisions.
Anyone
I
else?
don't think it's hard. You can like eat KFC all the time and do whatever you want. So we have to be our own decider, I suppose.
Anyone else write something different? Want to share, Bonnie? Bonnie, unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I wrote about my mum. I don't know my grandparents. They died when I was little, so it's like my mum's my light, but like I'm learning that also I gotta be my light as well.
Yeah.
So.
Anyone else?
Oh,
Oliver?
yeah. I initially wrote my parents, but then I started thinking about it, and I realized it's actually more so, I think, my sister. Like, she is the one who makes me do the things that I'm not motivated to do, but I need to do to, like, feel better and just, like, like I said, yeah, yeah, she's just great. And I'm not sure how to put it into words.
Well, maybe that could be your homework from this workshop. Oliver. Anyone else want to share anything? No?
Okay.
Great, please do.
I I don't know whose guardian this is. I have an elephant. She's crinkled but wise. She's the grandma and the great grandma I don't know. She has a neon bright white shock ability. She's like a legendary Pokemon who's never been caught. A girl who leads her family to every waterhole, every dam in the country. It's her who stamped on the man who touched me. It wasn't violent. She just gave him a gentle nudge in the right direction. Sometimes I pat her floppy ears. We listen to audiobooks about gathering love from waterholes. One day we'll have a podcast.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bella. Just beautiful. I wrote something about one of my grandmother's friends who lived to be 98 and died like 1 or 2 days before coronavirus was a thing. And I just thought her timing was spectacular. So I wrote, Ruth died aged 98, and she did it quietly with a minimum of fuss in the middle of the afternoon before the cleaners had knocked off. She had almost died before, choking on a piece of chicken. When she recovered, she berated the nurses, who then changed all her food to puree, so that way was closed to her. She was wise to choose March before her nursing home closed its doors, before she had to learn new words like social distancing and an abundance of caution. She was a class act. I hope she'll join her old friend, my grandmother, and bless my efforts at replicating her famous passion fruit sponge. So there you go. We have got a few minutes left. So why don't we do one more writing exercise? Why don't we just spend maybe 3 minutes? I want you to imagine the hug that you really want to have at the moment that you can't have. And I want you to write what that hug feels like. So the imaginary hug. So just take 3 minutes. Just describe that hug. I didn't give you very much time, but did anybody write even one line that you'd like to share with the rest of us? Holly, I know you joined us late and you haven't bonded with us all in quite the same way as we've bonded with each other, but is there anything you'd like to share with us?
Well, I didn't really finish writing anything particularly, but I was just thinking about when I finally get to reunite with my friend group and like how it'd be, I probably would be a bit awkward because I haven't seen anyone in a while, but I guess we'd all be feeling that way and it would all be just, you know.
Yeah. Good luck with that. Anyone else want to share anything? Bonnie?
Yeah, I kind of touched on, I don't want any of like the politeness. I'm over the politeness a little bit. Oh, can I do this? Can I do that? I know, I don't know. I'm excited for when I can just tackle hug someone and it's fine. So yeah, I wrote a bit about that.
Anyone else?
I wrote a line which I thought was quite nice. I'll just read what I wrote. I said, warm, soft, firm. We aren't seeing each other, but we both know the other is beaming. It lasts about 30 seconds.
That's lovely. It's really nice. Anyone else want to share anything on the topic of hugs? William?
All right. The cuddle laughs at your awful joke. The embrace warms you from within like a shot of whiskey. The hug cuts your hair and makes you look good again.
Great, fabulous. Well, we're coming to the end of our hour and a half. So I was going to leave some time at the end just to see if you had any questions for me, or if you could tell me whether you gathered anything useful or any pathways to go down today. But Bella's looking worried about something.
No, I was just reading Michaela's, as she posted in the chat, that her hug. I wasn't confused. I was actually just like,
I thought you were looking concerned about something. So I hope that you did find something, or the beginning of something today. I look forward to hearing more about William's 1.5 meter rubber band, and about Bonnie, you know, tackling somebody with a hug. And all of you, I hope that there's a little spark in there, either thinking about writing more about the shadow, thinking more about writing about the guardian, or thinking more about writing about that hug you're looking forward to, whichever. I hope you can expand or go on with that you got something useful out of today. And I encourage you to read a bit more prose poetry or flash fiction, and just see what's possible with that form. So good luck. May the force be with you. And it's been lovely to spend some time with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.